Let's begin by praying that the fruit of our learning should help to finally bring home the hostages and protect our soldiers and all of the innocents and bring speedy end to all of our conflicts.
Amen.
So we're going to start off now by looking at the tour. I'll just remind you, last week we looked at we did things as slightly out of chronological order. We looked at the Rambam and the Ravad, the Ravid, as we say in the Shiva. And what we saw is that the Rambam, the way the Rambam Paskin, didn't seem to fit into any understanding of our Gemara. And the Ravid understood that the Rambam had a different girsa, a different textual version in front of him, and he rejects it. He just says, I don't see this in any of my sparim. In other words, I didn't see this in any of my what we call manuscripts. I don't know if they called them manuscripts in the Middle Ages. We call them manuscripts, I think, in contrast to print books. But that's a different question. In any event, so we saw that. So what we did is we went back and looked at the Rabbeinu Hananel, and the Rabbeinu Hananel, of course, is a much earlier Gaon from North Africa, and the way we have it in our version of Rabbeinu Hananel, it's very much like the way Rashi seemed to have in his Gemara. But then we looked at the Rif, who learned in the school of Rabbeinu Hananel. I don't remember now if he was a direct student or if he was separated by a generation. But he learned basically in that school of Rabbeinu Hananel, and he had a different girsa. And what we understood from the Rif's girsa is that was obviously the basis for the Rambam. And what we saw was that, here we'll take a second and remind ourselves of how the Rambam paskin, and then we'll look at the tour. So since we read this last week, I'm just going to read for a minute. So here he says, actually, I'm just going to translate. So a boy who's 9 or 10 years old, we educate him by hours. Ketzad, how do we do that? If he was accustomed to eating at 2 hours of the day, we feed him at 3 hours. If he was accustomed to eating at 3 hours, we feed him at 4 hours. According to the strength of the boy, we add on to afflict him, as it were, or to fast him. Which, by the way, Michael, if you listen, I don't remember if it was last week or the week before, but I did confirm your contention that to fast in English can be used as a transitive verb, which I'd never heard, but it was really interesting. So here also, so the Rambam, until this point, he's talking about a boy. He says we start to educate this boy when he's 9 or 10 by hours, and then we get up to where he says ben achadasrei shana, bein zachar bein nekeva. So if he's 11 years old, whether this is a boy or a girl, mit adnen, they fast, mashlim, and they complete the fast. Midivrei sofri, midin de rabbanan, kadei lechancho b'mitzvot, in order to educate him with mitzvot. So one of the diukim that we can make, if you remember the way the Gemara ended off, the Gemara had a question of Rav Huna and Rav Nachman about this term chinuch, essentially, because according to Rav Huna and Rav Nachman, chinuch, and according to Rabbi Yochanan, chinuch in the Mishnah, mechanchinota, meant mechanchinota l'sha'ot. And then we brought a problem. There was a problem from the Braita that says chinuch is the sha'ot, right? It confirmed that. But according to Rav Huna and Rav Nachman, the only way to read the Mishnah is to say that the Mishnah also includes this idea that you have to complete, that the boy or the girl has to complete the fast. And they called that Hashlama. And the Gemara ended up by saying, there's two kinds of education. So we call Chinuch L'Sha'ot Chinuch, but we also call making the child fast with the Rabbanan, that's also chinuch. So you see, that's how the Rambam ends off. He says, "Midivrei Sofrim." He says, "Kedei lachancho," the mitzvah. That's playing off the way the Gemara finishes. So the Ravid said, right? So he says, "Ben achadas shana, ben zachar ben nekeva mitaneh meshlim midivrei Sofrim." So he says, "Amar Avraham, girsa zu lo matzanu et habisfarenu." We didn't find this girsa, we didn't find this version in our books. That what? She has a charva nekeva shevim, that the boy and the girl should be equal. Ella, akol lefi habriut, hazachar lefi zmano, v'nekeva lefi zmana. Everything goes according to their health, the zachar according to his time, and the nekeva, the girl, according to her time. And halach is like Rav Huna and Rav Nachman, that they hold the same opinion and they don't argue with one another. Rather, one is talking about a boy and one is talking about a girl. So the girsa of the Ravid was clearly the girsa of Rashi, which makes sense. But the Rambam had this different girsa, and that was what we saw in the Rif. So now let's go ahead and look at the tour. And let's see, Michael Warner, why don't you read from, hold on a second. The beginning talks about other.
Shale?
Yes.
Maybe, well, it's just a conjecture. Maybe the Rambam didn't have another Girsa, but because the Sugya is Mevulbelet, as who said that? The Ameiri, I think. Yes. He tried to Meiri said, yes. So maybe he tried to fix it, to do a Girsa of himself, to make it clear.
So that's okay. So I'll say a couple of things about that, and one of them is I don't consider myself to be a true expert, but I've gone through all or nearly all of the Rambam's Perush al Mishnah, as well as lots of other places in the Rambam. But mainly the reason I mentioned the Perush al Mishnah is in the whole Perusha Mishnah, I only have seen, I think, twice where the Rambam talks about Girsa, where it's an issue. The Rambam, I think, came from this tradition where the Girsa the received Girsa was considered essentially to be sacrosanct. It was really accepted as is, and he dealt with it as it is, as I say, except in a couple of very rare occasions. So I don't think that the Rambam would have seen that Girsa and come to this conclusion. And this is as I say, it's the implication of the Ravid, that he understood the Rambam had a different Girsa. And what's interesting about this, in my experience, is that the Chachamim in Western Europe at that time were more aware of Girsaot from North Africa than vice versa. In other words, Rashi saw Rabbeinu Hananel. Rashi, we know because he quotes Rabbeinu Hananel. Now, if he saw all of Rabbeinu Hananel, that I don't know, but we know he saw Rabbeinu Hananel on certain parts, and we know that from other things that we've talked about, that Rashi saw other Girsaot, and as I pointed out to you, Rashi Rashi himself sometimes felt compelled to modify the girsa that was in front of him. And that's when he says, Hachi Garsinan. But we don't see that with the Rif and the Rambam. We don't see it with them. So I don't think that's the case. By the way, I was thinking this would be a bit of a digression, but since you brought it up, in this issue of the Girsa, since you brought it up again, I will show you one other thing that you have to take into account when we talk about Girsa. The whole subject of Girsas is wide and deep. So I'll show you an interesting thing. So this is the fourth chapter of Baba Metzia. And here, Michael Warner, you can read this, Hazahav.
הזהב קונה את הכסף, והכסף אינו קונה את הזהב. You want me to translate or it's pretty clear.
Well, go ahead and translate.
So gold buys silver, but silver does not buy gold.
Okay, so you translate it. Do you understand what that means?
Yes, one can buy silver using gold, but one can't buy gold using silver.
Okay, that you would think so.
Yes.
So
I guess that means that I'm clearly wrong.
No, you're not wrong. But the question, like, what does that mean? Like, what does that imply? What do you mean that silver can't buy gold or that gold buys silver? So let's use the term acquire instead of buy, because it has a slightly different connotation. And let's read the Bartanura. So you can read the beginning here of the Bartanura. Kol.
Oh, כל דבר שהוא חשוב להיות מטבע.
Matbea.
מטבע.
Hold on, I'll make it bigger.
And harif. Okay, yes, that's good. Thank you. Let me just find where I was. Harif לנתן בהוצאה עמדים מאות יש לו ואינו קונה את שק שכן נגדו שאינו חשוב מטבע ואינו חריף בהוצאה כמוהו.
Komoto. Okay, so let's stop here for a second. So the Bartanur is explaining what we have to understand. I don't want to dive deeply into the Mishnah, but this is a general concept in halacha, in Dine Mamonot, how acquisitions are made. All right. So if you're, and there's, let's say, broadly speaking, you can acquire either metaltalin, what we would call chattel, that is movable property of any kind, as opposed to immobile property, which we also call real estate. That's why we call it
the Lonaida.
Right, and the term in modern Hebrew we use with nadlan, which is Rashi Tevot for nichse de lo naidi, which is Aramaic for nechasim shelo menadim, shelo nayadim, which means property that doesn't move, immobile property. So there are different ways of acquiring ground, adama, nadlan, and there are other ways of acquiring essentially everything that isn't real estate is metaltalin. So here what we're talking about, Bartunu says, Kol davar shu chashuv yot matbea, anything that is considered to be a coin, the charif linaten bahotza'a. And I guess literally say it's sharp to be given for purchase, right? For hotza'ah, from buying something. Meaning, what does he mean harif? In other words, it's what we'd say in English is the coin of the realm. It's something, this particular, anything that's considered to be a coin that you could use essentially as is to make a purchase, to make some kind of a transaction.
So
Then
maybe a looser term, maybe a better looser term, which is medium of exchange.
Yes. Yeah,
So like anyway,
yeah, my
in
hesitation with saying
Mesoamerica,
my hesitation about saying medium of exchange is that medium of exchange can also include things that are not necessarily harif. In other words, in a barter, in any kind of barter, both sides of the barter are a medium of exchange. But here what we're talking about specifically is coin. So there, in other words, what makes a coin different than any other kind of barter transaction? It's because it's used for this, for this purpose. Michael Werner, what do you want to say?
or maybe we can say that sort of its exchange value is not necessarily tied to its use value.
Okay, but we don't. Let's not make it more complicated than we have to. So anything that is considered to be a coin, and it's used, it's used for it's used. Let's, I'm going to modify your other term. It's used as a primary means of exchange. Let's say that. Din ma'ot yesho. It has the din of money. It's considered to be money. Ve'eno koneh et shekenegdo. It doesn't acquire that which is correspondent to it. In other words, the thing, it can't acquire another thing. Sheino chashuv matbea. That's not considered to be a coin. Ve'eno charif b'hotza'ah kamoto. In other words, money, what we call money, doesn't buy, that you can't, that itself doesn't, let me step back. You can't hand somebody money and thereby complete a transaction of acquisition. Metaltalin have to be acquired by actually by physical taking possession. So in other words, if you come to me and you want to buy a pair of tefillin and you give me a lot of money, whatever it is, and I accept that money, so right now you don't own the tefillin. I may owe you a pair of tefillin, but you haven't actually acquired the tefillin. So this is going to be true also for anything like that. And you won't acquire the tefillin until you actually lift up the tefillin and take them into your possession.
But have you acquired the money?
Yeah, because I lifted it up.
Okay.
It's my money. So now I own the money. I also have an obligation. I owe you a pair of tefillin, right? Either I'd have to give back the money, or I give you a pair of tefillin. And giving back the money, that gets into other things. If you go back on a business deal, that's something else, which is also discussed here in Baba Metzia. But I own the money, but you don't own the tefillin. And so here, what we're talking about silver, gold, and copper. So these were the main, they were then as they are now. These are the main metals that are used for making coins. So what the Bartanu is saying, Zahav koneh kesef, anything that is considered to be a coin, v'charif linaten v'hotza'ah. So I'm going to say that means it is a primary means of exchange. In other words, this is something that people use as a means of exchange for as a basis for making a purchase. So din ma'ot yeshlo. So that's considered to be money. The eino koneh, so it doesn't acquire that which corresponds to it, which is not a coin and is not a primary means of exchange. Mi she'ein tivo chashuv v'charif. Here, Michael Schwartz, you can continue. Mi she'ein.
ומי שאין טיבו חשוב וחריף, דין פירות יש לו, ומשיקתו הוא קיום דבר.
Okay, so let's just say what that means. Mi she'ein tivo chashuv v'charif. That which its nature is not that it is important and charif, that is, that it's a popular means of exchange, then din peirot yeshlo. It has the din of peirot. Peirot here doesn't literally mean fruit, but it means an item. It means it's also like chattel. In other words, it has the din of something of value. I'm trying to think of a word, but it means it's something of value, but it itself is not a primary means of exchange. So it's like fruit, right? You don't usually go to the store with a barrel of apples and expect to be able to use that to buy your groceries. So what's the din? U'mashichato hu kiyum davar. Literally pulling on it, that's what establishes the thing. And that's what I meant. That the acquisition of peirot only comes about with mishicha, either by pulling it or lifting it. You have to demonstrate ownership physically. If it's too big for you to pick up, like if it's a car or a donkey or something like that, well, the donkey actually you can get on it and ride it. But I'm just throwing this in, another way of doing this is you can symbolically pick it up by picking up anything and saying I'm now picking this up as a Kabbalat Kinyan. I am making the acquisition by picking this thing up, which if you've been married
Megillat root.
What?
Megillat root. That's
in Megillat Ruth, it's yes, it's similar. It's not exactly the same, but it is a related issue in Megillat Ruth. I don't want to get into Megillat Ruth because it brings in other halachot. But if you've been to a wedding, right, and even if you haven't been married, but you know if you've been at the Chassan's Tish, so right before the witnesses sign, the Rav HaMesader hands him either a handkerchief or a pen or something, and he tells him to lift it up. And that's his Kabbalat Kinyan, because the marriage ceremony is a Kinyan of the husband to the wife, which I also don't want to get into because it's also a different kind of Kinyan. But that's how you do a Kabbalat Kinyan for something that you don't necessarily lift up or pull. In any event, what do we get from here? Paul, you want to read a little bit? Lefikach?
לפיכך, מיקי משך האחד דינרי זהב, קנה השני דינרי כסף בכל מקום שהם, ואין אחד מהם יכול לחזור בו. דינרי זהב הבו פירות לגבי דינרי כסף.
Okay, so therefore, as soon as the one person pulls on, in other words, right, so he physically moves the dinare zahav, that's the zahav of the Mishnah, then the other person has acquired that person's silver coins. So let's say we have Reuven and Shimon. Reuven has Reuven has silver and Shimon has gold. And Zahav Konet Kesef, what does that mean? Reuven, who did I say? Reuven has silver and Shimon has gold. Let's do it the other way. Reuven has gold and Shimon has silver. So Shimon, he wants to acquire the gold. So if he lifts up the gold, then Reuven automatically acquires the silver that Shimon had, that he was using to exchange, anywhere that it exists. Why is that? And neither one of them can go back on this deal, because dinarei zahav are peirot legabe dinarei kesef. That is, the dinarei zahav are not considered to be the coin of the realm, and that's why, and that rather they're like peirot. So the zahav could also have been an iPod. In other words, it's just metaltalin. It's just a kind of chattel. Because why? Because the kesef, what it's saying is that's the status of zahav. Zahav is not considered to be a coin that's charif lahotza b'chol makom, but kesef, silver coins are. In other words, silver is the dominant currency. So the way the acquisition happens, so hazahav konet kesef, meaning what? So like the Bartanura says, so if Reuven wants to buy gold, and he wants to buy it using his silver. So he wants
Golden coins, golden coins.
So it could be right. So it could even be golden coins. So he wants the gold coins, and he wants to pay for them with silver coins. So as soon as he picks up the gold coins, the transaction is complete, because he has taken possession, he has acquired the gold coins by Meshicha. And once he did that, then Shimon owns his silver coins wherever they are. They could be in a bank, they could be across the sea, they could be anywhere else, but he owns them. In other words, he doesn't have to do anything now to complete the transaction. But if it was the other way around, hakesef eino koneh et hazahav. So wait, let's go back to Michael Werner. Hakesef eino koneh et hazahav.
So basically, if he lifts up the kesef, he does not.
Let's read. Hakesef.
And kesef does not acquire gold. Silver does not acquire gold.
Silver does not acquire gold. Go ahead.
The dinarei kesef shehem harifim behotza'ah. Dimeot yesh lahem.
Ma'ot.
Den ma'ot. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yesh lahem legibei dinarei zahav. So where was I? Oh, the gold coins are currency, require things sort of outside of where they physically are.
Well, not the gold coins. Dinrei zahav, dinrei kesef, right? Silver coins, silver money, shehem charifim b'hotza'ah, which are used as currency. Din ma'ot yesh lahem.
Okay.
What does that mean? Din ma'ot yesh lahem.
They have the status of currency, of coinage.
Right. And I'm just going to say money. So right. L'gabei dinarei zahav. That vis-a-vis dinarei zahav. And therefore what? Go ahead, read a little more. V'im.
Im mashach achad dinar kesef. So if one picks up, if one picks up,
Literally pulls.
Oh,
Mashach literally means to pull.
okay. So if one, right, koach meshicha, right? If one pulls the one dinar kesef, so if one pulls gold coins,
No. Dinar kesef.
Oh, I meant silver coins. Sorry, that's just synapses.
Go ahead.
So if one pulls as silver coins, one does not thereupon acquire the gold coins until one actually physically pulls them.
And why? Dima'ot einan konot. Money does not buy, literally. But in other words, money does not accomplish acquisition. So I'm going to stop here. And the whole reason I showed you this. So what do we see? We have this idea that Zahav konet kesef because Zahav is considered to be peirot vis-a-vis kesef. The kesef is the coin of the realm, and that's what we consider to be currency. And Zahav is not really considered to be currency. But let's take a look for a moment at, hold on.
Now, if there are different understandings among the two parties to the transaction as to what constitutes currency or what constitutes money.
No. So here, I just want hold your question. Hold your question for a second. Paul, I want you to read. This is the same Mishnah in the Yerushalmi. This is the Girsa of the Yerushalmi. What does it say?
מתני, הכסף קונה את הזהב, והזהב אינו קונה את הכסף. It's just the other way around.
It's exactly the other way around.
הנחושת קונה את הכסף, והכסף אינו קונה את הנחושת.
Okay, so we're going to just focus on this first line. Kesef konet zahav, zahav eino konet kesef. So we see. So who was the orech of the Mishnah?
הנשיא, השם שלו.
Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi.
רבי יהודה הנשיא, כן.
Okay, so I'll show you this we can.
רבי יהודה הנשיא arranged the Mishnah for Yerushalayim, not of.
No, he arranged.
Not of Babel.
No. There's only one Mishnah.
There's one Mishnah. Okay.
There's not like Talmud Bavli.
It's not like the Gemara. It's not like the Gemara.
Not like the Gemara. No.
Mm-hmm.
So hold on. Let's start from here. This is well, hold on a second. Okay, so this is the Bavli. And the Bavli's Mishnah is the way we read it in the Stam Mishnah. Hazahav koneh et kesef, a kesef eno koneh et hazahav. So now um, let's skip to the Gemara, and Michael Schwartz, you read Matnile.
Matnile Rebbe Shimon Beria, Hazahav
Beret.
Beret, Hazav koneh et kesef, Amar lo Rebbe, Shenit lanu b'yildotich, hakesef koneh et hazahav, v'tigzor v'tishna lanu b'ziknotich, hazahav koneh et hakesef.
So, okay, yeah, you can read a little more. Bialdute.
B'yaldute mai savar, u'b'ziknote mai savar, b'yildote savar, hava dakshiv, havi teva, kaspa, lo chashiv, havi peria, v'kanile pera, v'kanile pera l'tava, v'ziknotea savar kaspa.
Yes, you have to turn the page. The Harif.
The Harif havi teva, the haba de lo Harif havi pera, v'kanile pera l'tava.
Stop. So this gives us a little bit of an insight about this difference in girsa. So the Gemara says, what did you just read? So Matnile Rebbe Rebbe Shimon Berei. So Rebbe, that's Rebbe Yehuda Nasi. His Stam Rebbe is Rebbe Yehuda Nasi. So he learned this Mishnah. He learned this Mishnah in other words, he taught this Mishnah to his son Rebbe Shimon. And when he taught it to him, he said, "This is the Mishnah. Hazahav koneh et kesef." So Amar lo, so Rebbe Shimon, his son, said to him, "Rabbi, shanit lanu bialdutech hakesef koneh et hazahav." When you were a child, literally in your youth. In other words, when you were younger, you taught us the Mishnah, hakesef koneh et hazahav. And now you're going to turn around when you're older and say the opposite, that the zahav koneh et hakesef. So the Gemara comments, the Gemara says, Bialdute my savar, v'ziknukte my savar. What did he think when he was younger? And what did he think in his old age? In his youth, he thought, the hava is zahav. The dalet is mitchalefet with the zayin. Gold, the chashiv, that is considered, in other words, that it's important, havitiva, it's matbeya, it's currency. When he was younger, he thought that gold is the real currency. And kaspa, the lo chashiv, kesef, which is not so important, havipira. It's like fruit, as we explained when we learned the Mishnah. In other words, it's metaltalin. It's not currency. V'kani lepira lativa, all right, and peirot can acquire currency. They can acquire money. The ziknutei savar, but when he was older, savar, he thought kaspa decharif havitiva, kesef, silver, which is charif, which Rashi explains. You see, this is where the Bartenu got his language. Yotzei b'hotza'ava over l'socher. It goes out, for expenses, for acquiring things, and it's accepted by any merchant, right? That's charif. So kesef is charif. So dahava and zahav is not charif. Havipira, the kani lepira lativa, and peirot. So the general rule still stays the same. Peirot can acquire money, but money can't acquire peirot. What we mean by that is like what the Bartanura explained. If you're making an exchange, I'm going to give you 10 shekels for a kilo of tomatoes. As soon as I pick up the tomatoes, I own them, and you own my money. But if I give you money, I still don't own the tomatoes. I still don't own them only until after I acquire them. So why did I go through this whole exercise? This is to show you another aspect of Girsa. Sometimes Girsa is different because that same source, in this case Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, when he was younger, he learned the Mishnah Hakesef Konet Zahav. But when he was older, he changed his mind. Now, it could be that he changed his mind because maybe the market changed. And maybe when he was younger, Zahav was Charif and Kesef wasn't Charif. And when he was older, it changed. And I read something about this once because it did have to do with, I think, something that the Romans did with their coins. I don't know. There's a theory about that. So I bring this back to you to say that one of the reasons that we have the issue with Girsa, sometimes it goes back to the primary source. And we see this in the Gemara in other places, where let's say, so and so, Rabbi Yochanan says something, and then we bring another source. Somebody else says, but I heard from Rabbi Yochanan the opposite. And sometimes the answer is that Rabbi Yochanan changed his mind. So that's also part that has to be thrown into this mix. Paul, go ahead.
Yes, that shows that when the circumstances of life change, you can also change the psika. And there are people today who wouldn't accept this. And you know
well,
whom I'm talking about.
I know what you're referring to, but I'll also tell you, actually, if you learn the riff on this sugya, you'll see that the riff also, it's one of the times the riff goes out of his way to talk about the way exchange worked in his time. In other words, what you get from this, why does the Gemara altogether bring this exchange between Rabbi Yehuda Nasi and his son Rabbi Shimon? One of that we learn from that sometimes you have to be flexible in psika depending on circumstances, and that and so this idea, so it's not set in stone that zahav konet kesef eno konet zahav. It's not set in stone. It's going to depend on what's prevailing in the market.
So
and it leads. Go ahead.
No, sorry, this reminds me. My brother back in the 1980s caught a ride or got passage with a few friends of his deep into the Ecuadorian Amazon. And only upon arriving did he discover that, in a town deep in the Ecuadorian Amazon, nobody had heard of Thomas Cook traveler's checks.
Right. So those were, they were probably only worth the paper that they were printed on, which was not that much. So, and now this, of course, this is a whole separate discussion, right? About Michael Werner, you wanted to ask me something about an acquisition. I don't know if you still remember your question.
Oh, so I was thinking about sort of say the situation during Cortez's supposed conquest of the Aztecs, where they had each party in the transaction between, say, Montezuma and Cortez, they had different understandings about what constituted currency.
Yeah.
And, so Cortez thought it was gold, and Yeah, and there were other things used as currency, and in Mesoamerica, in that place and at that time.
Right. So he was able to make a killing, as it were. Okay.
More complex than that, but yes.
Uh,
His killing was done in other ways, but yes.
but at least in the market. In any event, okay, so that was just again, it was just another glimpse at issues of Girsa. So differences in Girsa can come about for different reasons. One of the reasons is that it could be that the primary source, let's say the Rav who said something, he may have taught it in a certain way, and then later in life he may have changed his mind and taught it a different way. And the first set of students maybe they weren't, still with him when he changed his mind. So they continued to teach the first version of what their Rebbe taught them. And the later students continued to teach it according to the later version. That's one way you can get differences in Girsa. Another way you get difference in Girsa is Ta'ut Sofer, that the Sofer who's doing the copying, he makes a mistake. Sometimes he makes a mistake because he missed a word or he read the word incorrectly, things like that. Sometimes his mistake could be that he sees the text and based on the way he learned, he thinks that the text is corrupt. And so he amends the text. And that's this issue that I talked to you about a number of times, which is that by the time we got to the 10th century in Rabbeinu Gershom said, from here on in, no one amends the text. If you think that there's a problem with the text, you make a note on the side. Because he wanted to just freeze it where it was before it got any worse. That was his intention. So there was a recognition that that texts had already been corrupted. Michael Werner, what did you want to say?
So that would imply that there's one particular version that he regarded as authoritative.
No, not necessarily. What he was saying is the version that we have in front of us, we'll just consider it for the moment. We'll consider it now to be fixed. But we don't want to change it because if I let people change it, they'll make changes that are incorrect, and the text will never be able to settle the text. So it's not that he considered that the text that he had was absolutely correct, but he didn't want it to get any worse.
Is this what is called the
Gloss, like
yes,
a gloss on the text.
yes.
Well, gloss is just any kind of comment on the text.
It's a comment, or it is a change of the text, an amendment of the text.
Gloss, I don't think gloss necessarily means a change in the text. It could also just be a comment on the text. Michael Werner, maybe you have something to say about, maybe you have a gloss to add. Okay, so what we know is that the text of the Gemara that was widely held, let's say, in North Africa, was not always identical to the text or texts that were in Western Europe, that were in Germany, France, Spain. They weren't always the same. And it seems like because of this cherem of Rabbeinu Gershom, because he was so concerned about it, that he must have already seen variants in the text. He must have seen many variants, and he wanted to put a stop to it. It's not that they didn't necessarily see variant texts in North Africa, but apparently the text was more fixed. And I'm sure that there's more history to it than that, but we'll leave it at that. So now that we have that little digression, let's come back to what we're learning about. So I don't remember who the last one to read was. All right, let's just start with Michael Werner. You read from here. Wait a second. We'll start from here. Umem mem, umikol makom. This is the tour.
ומכל מקום מנחים אותם להרגילם במצוות ומונעים מהם מאכל שעה אחת או יותר. So everywhere.
Keep reading. You're not finished.
ממש שרגיל שהם.
שעה אחת או יותר ממה
שרגיל שאם היה רגיל לאכול בשתי שעות.
בשתי שעות. בשני שעות.
בשני שעות. מאכילים אותו בשלוש, ואם הוא רגיל בשלוש, מאכילים אותו בארבע.
Okay, so let's stop here. So this is in the middle of a sentence, umikomakom, because earlier he's talking about other things that we do allow with children, right? So I'll just read this quickly. Children are allowed in all of these things. In other words, they're allowed in all of the inuyim, except for wearing leather shoes, because we're not so worried if they aren't wearing leather shoes. But for the other things, for which mitztarim, right? They make them unhappy, like they suffer. We don't hold back from them, and you're allowed to feed them. Biyadayim, you're allowed to directly feed them with your own hands. And the Ri said, you're allowed to say to a non-Jew to wash children, even in hot water that were warmed on that day, on Yom Kippur, because stam tino cholehu, a stam child, and here it really means an infant, is considered to be like a choleh. Eitzel Chamin, regarding warm water. In other words, it was they considered to be vital to the child's health to be washed every day in hot water. V'davar shein vo sakana. But if it's regarding something where there is no danger to the child, then you say to the non-Jew, and the non-Jew does it. Okay, so that's regarding the other inuyim. So what are the other inuyim? So of course it's rechitza and sicha mainly, because we're not. And so he says nilata sandal. We do make children do because they can go for a day without shoes, and it's not a big deal. But and rechitza and sicha, though, those are important. So those you're allowed to do. And now we come to eating. So that's what Michael Werner read. Mikol makom. Nonetheless, mechanchin otam lahargilam b'mitzvot. So what does that mean?
Less we train them, instruct them in order to get them accustomed to the mitzvot.
Right. ומונעים מהם מאכל שעה אחת או יותר ממה שרגיל. What does that mean?
And we prevent them from eating 1 hour or more from what they are accustomed to.
Right.
And so if they are accustomed to eating at 2 hours, we feed them at 3 hours. And if they're accustomed to the 3 hours, then we feed him at 4 hours.
Okay. Michael Schwartz, you continue. Ketzad.
כיצד תינוק הבריא מחנכים אותו לשעות בשנת י' 10 וי' א' 11 ובשנת י"ב 12 וי"ג 13 משלים מדרבנן ובשנת י"ד 14 משלים מן התורה והחולה שאינו חזק לסבול ותענית מחנכין אותו לשעת בשנת י"א ובי"ב ובשנת י"ג משלים מדרבנן ובשנת י"ד משלים מן התורה והתינוקות.
Okay, actually, let's stop with let's stop there for a minute. So for the tinok, in other words, for the boy, right? Tinok habari, so you can translate. Tinok habari.
Okay, so the healthy boy, we educate him by hours in the 10th, 11th, and 12th years. And in the 13th year, he may.
Wait. Bishnat Yud v'Yud Aleph.
Wait.
We educate him by hours when he's 10 and 11.
At 10 and 11, and in the 12 and 13 years, he finishes the fast midrabanan, and in the 14th years he finishes it from the Torah, b'daraita. And
Right.
if a sick child and is not able to withstand the fasting, we educate him by sha'ot in the 11th and 12th years, and in the 13th year he finishes the fast midrabanan, and in the 14th year he finishes it from the Torah midaraita.
Right. So that's for the boy. So Paul, you continue. Atinoket.
והתינוקת שממהרת לחשב גדולה קודם התינוק, שנה אחת.
שנה אחת. הבריאה.
מהתינוק שנה אחת. הבריאה מחנכים אותה לשעות בשנת 9 ו10, ובשנת 11 ו12 משלמת מדרבנן, ובשנת י"ג משלמת מדאורייתא, והחולה מחנכים אותה לשעות בשנת י' וי"א, ומשלמת מדרבנן בשנת י"ב, מדרבנן בשנת י"ב, ומדאורייתא בשנת י"ג, וכדרך שמחנכים אותם באכילה, כך מחנכים אותם ברחיצה וסיכה.
Okay. So now we see the Tur essentially paskins like Rav Huna and Rav Nachman.
Mm-hmm.
So he goes in that direction. We skipped over the Rosh, but I believe this is his father, the Rosh. I think this is how he learned. The Rosh had more of the tradition that came from Rashi. And so that's the way he paskins. And he says, so for a boy, we start when he's 10 and 11 to make him fast sha'ot, right? To make him fast, you start eating later. When he's 12 and 13, he finishes the fast midurabanan. And in the 14th year, in other words, when he's completed 13 whole years, and now he's 14, then he has to complete the fast miduraita. And for the girl, it's the same, but it starts a year earlier, right? So it starts when she's 9 or 10, b'sha'ot, and he says the reason why Shema Maher lechashev gdola. Lechashev is it's an Aramaic form. It's lehechashev in Hebrew. She is faster in being considered like an adult more than the boy. So that's the tour. So we have the Rif and the Rambam. We have the Rif and the Rambam on the one hand, but now we have the tour says this. So now let's look at the Shulchan Aruch. So okay, so let's go see. Michael Warner, you can now this, you know what? Wait a second. It might be easier. Okay. Yeah, I prepared it over here. It's gonna be easier to read it from here because it doesn't have all the little footnote references. Let me just make this larger and make sure that you can see it. Just a second. Yeah, okay. Go ahead, Katan.
Katan ben Tesha Shanim.
But you can read what's in the parentheses.
Okay. Katan Habari ben Tesha Shanim Shalemot ben Eser Shanim Shalemot Mechanhin Oto B'Sha'ot. So a healthy child who is 9 years, 9 complete years, and who is 10 complete years, we instruct him, train him by Sha'ot.
Okay, continue, Kitzad.
And how do we do this? If he is accustomed to eating, I should be reading in Hebrew, in Ivrit, shouldn't I?
You should, because you need the practice.
היה רגיל לאכול בשני השעות ביום.
There's no hey. B'shnei sha'ot.
בשני שעות. I'm not sure what I said. ביום.
You said hasha'ot.
Okay, no, I did. Okay, that was just okay. בשני שעות ביום מאכילין אותו בשלושה. היה רגיל לאכול בשלוש שעות מאכילין אותו ברביעית. לפי כוח הבן מוסיפים לענות אותו בשעות, והוא הדין לקטנה הבריאה.
Okay, so stop. So what does that mean?
Okay, so somebody who is, I need to find where I was. Okay, so a child who is accustomed to eating at 2 hours in the day, he is fed 3 hours. And if he's accustomed to eating 3 hours, feed him in 4 hours. According to the strength of the child, we add time to fasting him by hours. And this is the ding, this is the judgment,
Well,
for a
here
healthy
just
child.
means halacha.
This is the
Right,
halacha for a healthy child.
For a healthy
child.
For a healthy girl.
A healthy girl.
In other words, until now, we've been talking about a boy. So in the parentheses, it's the Haggah, is to say, this is the same din for a healthy girl. And that's a
what are these curly brackets for? Is this to set it? Or?
So that the curly brackets means that this is not from the text of the Shulchan Aruch. This was a
somebody added it to be even clearer, something like this.
Yeah, so mostly those are the
like Rav Steinsaltz
what
does. He adds
no,
all.
but this is the mostly the brackets here are the Ramah from Moshe Isserles. And
He added,
in a
yeah.
standard print of the Shulchan Aruch, it'll be in Rashi script to distinguish it from the text of the Shulchan Aruch.
Wait a minute. Well, the Rama added this for the Ashkenazim, but maybe it's not true for the Sfaradim.
No, but actually this is true for the Sfaradim. And I also want to acknowledge something which I've only recently started to try to figure out. In the Rama, when the Rama makes his personal comments, he starts off with the word Haggah. In other words, Haggah, I'm making an emendation. The other brackets where it doesn't say Haggah, I don't think those were from the Rama, but I'm not sure who they were from, but they were also very old. They might, I'm honestly not sure. I always thought that they were the Rama. I always thought that anything in these in brackets here would be the Rama, but I'm not sure. In any event, it's not the Shulchan Aruch. It's not the Shulchan Aruch. And the Rama, yes, mostly the Rama, but not all of, most of the Rama's comments are to reflect the psak in Artzot Ashkenaz. But sometimes he just disagrees with the Shulchan Aruch. Here in Orach Chaim, where a lot of it is, right, a lot of the halachot are really minhag, they're based on minhag. So there, a lot of it's predominantly what the minhag was in Ashkenaz. But let's say in Choshen Mishpat, which is essentially civil law and tort law, things like that, or even in Yoredeya, there some of it's minhag and some of it was that he disagreed with the Shulchan Aruch. Okay, but in any event, what do we see?
The language is almost Hebrew and not rabbinic.
It's still this rabbinic Hebrew because you see it says ma'achilin. It doesn't say ma'achilim.
But it's not. Yes.
Right. In other words, but let's say it has less Aramaic than some. It varies. But what did we get up to? Okay, v'hu adin niktana bria ben Yudalef, right? Ben Zachar, and how does the Shulchan Aruch end off? Michael Schwartz, you can read. Ben Yudalef.
Ben Yudalef, Ben Zachar, Ben Nekava, Mit'anin, Umashlimin, Divrei Sofrim, Kedei Lachanchan, Mitzvot. So a ben that's a boy that's 11, a child that's 11, whether it's male or female, we make them fast and complete the fast rabbinically in order to educate them in the mitzvot.
Okay, so who is that psak like?
That's like the Rambam.
That's like the Rambam. That was the riff in the Rambam. And it was not the Tur. Remember, the Tur said there's a set of halachot for boys and a set of halachot for girls, and they're basically the same, but the boy starts at 10 and the girl starts at 9, and so forth. But here we see that the Shulchan Aruch actually paskins like the Rambam, and I think I mentioned this before that the Beis Yosef Karo, when he wrote his Perush around the Tur, what he called the Beit Yosef, he says in the very beginning that generally the way he's going to paskin is he's going to look first at these three poskim, the Rif, the Rambam, and the Rosh. And he'll take the best out of three. If there's a disagreement, he'll go 2 out of 3. And here, 2 out of 3, the Rif and the Rambam held this idea that whether it's a boy or whether it's a girl, they have to finish the fast when they're 11 years old. Paul, you continue. Haggah.
הגה, ויש אומרים שאינם צריכים להשלים מדרבנן. כלל,
There shouldn't be a comma here. It should be she'enan tzrichim lashlim midrabanan klal.
כלל, כלל, not
Like
that it is,
bichlal.
not that this is a rule, כלל, בכלל.
It means bichlal. In modern Hebrew, you say bichlal, right? So some people,
you can't say klal also.
You can also say. So the punctuation here isn't always accurate. That's why I like to do my own sheets. In any event, so some people say that they don't need to finish the fast midrabanan at all, right? And remember, and that is based on the Gemara that like Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan held there was no hashlama. And he quotes the sources: the Ran, the Or Zarua, the Hagaot Maimoniot, in the name of the Halachot Gedolot, the Rokeach, and the Re'em. Continue. V'yesh.
ויש לסמוך עליהו בנער שהוא כחוש ואינו חזק להתענות. תרומת הדשן, סימן קנ"ה. בכל מקום שמחנכים אותו באכילה, מחנכים אותו ברחיצה וסיכה, על פי הטור.
Okay, so what does all that mean? יש לסמוך עליו בנער שהוא כחוש ואינו חזק להתענות. So we
should rely on this psika for a boy who is thin, kachush.
Yeah, well, okay, but we'll say sickly, like weak.
Sick. Okay, weak. Ve'eno chazak, and he isn't strong. He isn't strong enough to fast. And this comes from, it's again a source, yes? Trumat Adeshin.
Yeah, that's it. The Trumat Adeshin is Tshuvot. It was also Me'artzot Ashkenaz. The Trumat Adeshin was the Ma'arik who was from Cologne. He was from Germany.
Okay. V'chol makom, and everywhere where he is educated, one educates him how to eat, one educates him how to wash and how to sikah.
So not so much how to, but right, educating them regarding,
okay.
Regarding eating on Yom Kippur. So we also educate them regarding washing and anointing.
Okay, anointing. Okay.
Michael Werner, Bat Yud Bet.
A girl child.
Read in Hebrew.
Okay. Bat 12 ויום אחד, ובין 13 ויום אחד, שהביאו שתי...
שהביאו.
או שהביאו שתי שערות, הרי הם כגדולים לכל מצוות ומשלימים מן התורה.
Okay, so what does that mean?
So a girl child who is 12 years old and a day, and who's 13 years old and a day.
Well, but so a girl child who's 12 years and a day, and
Oh, and a boy child who's 13 years old and a day, and who has 2 pubic hairs. They are regarded as being like adults, where all mitzvot are concerned, and they are made to complete the fast from the Torah, the Doraita.
very good. And, yeah. Okay, and Michael Schwartz, read the last part. Alvi'im.
ואם לא הביאו שתי שערות, עדיין קטנים הם ואינם משלימים אלה מדברי סופרים. But if they have not brought forth 2 hairs, they are still considered children, and they don't complete the fast only midrabanan, but by the rabbis, not from the Torah.
Okay. Paul, Haggah.
הגה ואפילו הוא רך וכחוש, צריך להשלים דחי שינן, שמא נשכו השערות. תרומת הדשא.
Okay, so what does that mean?
Even if he is sick and weak,
Mm-hmm.
he has to complete the fast. Let's say the Chai Shinan.
Chosheshin. It's like it's that. So that's Aramaic. The Chayshinan is shechosheshim. We're choshesh. We're afraid.
Afraid that the hairs would
Fell off.
fall off. Yes.
So there.
But
so
who
there
is going to check the hairs? Nobody
the
is
thing
going
is-
to do such a thing.
Okay, so the truth is that especially for something like this, people don't. You're not going to check. There's certain things that you might check, but for this, you're not going to check. But what the point is, even if like maybe the boy will say, "Look, I don't have any hairs," but once the idea here is that once the girl is 12 in a day, and once the boy is 13 in a day, even if they are sickly, even if they don't have hairs, we make them complete the fast because what does it mean we're afraid that the hairs fell out? The idea is that there's a chazaka, there's a general assumption, there's a halachic assumption that when a girl reaches 12 in a day and a boy reaches 13 in a day, that they have started puberty. And they had hairs. And even if we don't see the hairs, we assume that the hairs were there and they fell out. It's just another way of saying that once you reach 12 in a day and 13 a day, for this purpose of fasting on Yom Kippur, we assume that they are adults and they have to fast even if they're sickly. Of course, that will be mitigated if they're very sick, then they'll be like any other adult who's very sick. And that's the next sugya that we're going to go into in the Gemara. What happens when somebody is not well, and when do we make them fast, and to what degree do we make them fast?
Does it matter if they fast the Rabbanan or the Sofrim? They fast in the end.
But what he's saying is that nowadays, in terms of a practical outcome, there is no practical difference between saying I'm doing this d'oraita or doing it d'Rabbanan. Either way, you have to do it.
Nobody is going to ask that. Tell me, are you fasting the Rabbanan or the d'oraita? That's not a legitimate.
No, and also because there isn't a Beit Din that's going to punish them if they didn't fast.
Of course, yes.
So if they were underage, if they were underage and you hold that there was a din d'Rabbanan that they have to fast, and then they didn't fast, then maybe they're going to be liable to punishment, except that because they're underage, they're in any event not liable for punishment.
Mm.
So in a sense, it doesn't make a difference. The difference is going to be, though, practically, safek d'Rabbanan lekula, the safek d'oraita lechumra. So if even for an underage child, if they're who, let's say, a boy who's 12 in a day. So according to the psak of the Shulchan Aruch, he should fast midrabanan. But if for him, let's say, if he starts fasting a little bit later than what we are noheg to fast, and it's safek ben hashmashot, so then maybe he didn't begin his fast until maybe after ben hashmashot. So then maybe that's then will whatever divine punishment he might get might not be given, because it was all altogether a safek midrabanan. Anyway, we don't have to get into these kinds of details right now, but sometimes it is important to know whether something is a din d'oraita or din d'Rabbanan, because of how we're going to treat that halacha, how we treat the circumstance. So, Michael Werner, you'll finish off. Katan.
קטן שהוא פחות מבין 9, אין מעניין אותו ביום כיפור, כדי שלא יבוא על ידי הסכנה.
Okay, so what does that mean?
So a child who is less than, or a boy child who's less than 9 years old, we don't afflict him on Yom Kippur so that he does not enter into danger.
Right, and then read the Haggah.
אפילו אם רוצה להחמיר על עצמו, מוחים בידו.
So what does that mean?
Even if he wants to be strict with himself, we give him food.
No, mochin means that essentially that we protest against him. In other words, it doesn't say that we out not force him to not fast, but mochin biyado. In other words, we discourage him from doing that. This is a machloket rishonim. If you remember Rashi on the Mishnah, when he said tinokot ein ma'aninotan, Rashi says it means we don't prevent them from having food. But other Rishonim understood it to mean that we feed them. We make sure to feed them because of sakana, because it's dangerous for them not to eat. And this is the opinion that the Rama is bringing. This is the side that the Rama is bringing. That essentially a child who's less than this age of chinuch, we don't really let them fast. We don't want them to fast. And even if they want to fast, we discourage them from doing that. So we don't force feed them, but we yeah, go ahead.
That's not an unusual circumstance.
Where the younger child wants to fast.
Mm.
I know.
You see that.
Yeah, because they want to be grown up, and so they want to fast.
They are doing tacharut among in their class.
Yes. There's a lot.
You want to be a gibor, yes, something like this.
And so we're not going to do the Mishnah Berurah and all of this, but I'll just mention the last Mishnah Berurah here on this point, Ein ma'aninoto, right? That a katan who's less than 9 years old, we don't make him fast on Yom Kippur. And the Mishnah Berurah says, Hainu afil l'chinuch sha'ot. We don't even make them fast by hours. But the whole idea of, in other words, up until the age of 9 for a boy, or age of 8 for a girl, you're supposed to feed them normally. Anyway, that's where I think that's going to be the end of that for this part of this discussion. And then next time we're going to continue in the Gemara. We're going to come to the next Mishnah about a pregnant woman who smells food on Yom Kippur. And this will lead into the discussion about people who are choleh, are considered to be like choleh on Yom Kippur, and how we treat them. So that's it for now. Unless there are any last questions or comments. Okay.
There will be a class next week. You said that you go to the States, or no?
I'm going to the States on the 17th of December.
Ah, okay.
So I'll be here for a while. That week, there won't be class because the 17th is Wednesday, I think. Right?
The 17th is a Tuesday, because I'm flying on the 19th.
You're right. The 17th is a Tuesday, but I'm not sure. I think, oh, maybe there will be class because I think I arrive on the 17th as well, which means, all right, by then I'll let you know, assuming they don't cancel my ticket. Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Good night. Thank you.
Laila
I
tov.
wish you good luck, because I got my tickets canceled twice and I didn't go. in the
Oh,
end,
I was going to ask you. You were supposed to
I
travel.
didn't go. I didn't go.
Wow. Why? That was with Lufthansa. And are they not flying at all?
No.
No, they're not. They're
They
not
came
flying.
back, and then again they called it off. And it's complicated.
I understand. I know. It is. Tov.
Okay.
Laila tov.
Good night. Thank you.
Bye-bye.